and welcome to Workers Seeking to Upskill, our podcast for today. Looking forward to having a great conversation with all of you who've joined, and thank you from wherever you are for joining around the globe. We're going to have a great conversation today with Christina Costa, my colleague, team coach, experienced professional in the workplace when it comes to coaching folks and talking to people about how to upskill themselves. So, welcome, Christina. I hope everybody's ready to get upskilled with Christina. We're looking forward to the conversation today. So, Christina's background is on LinkedIn, and it's also available on the um, invitation that was sent around. But I thought I'd ask you this question, Christina. I know a little bit about you and that you have traveled to 32 countries around
And
the world
counting.
and counting, and you have lived and worked in 4 countries. So tell us a little bit about what that was like and how much you've learned from that to coach people and tell them a little bit about upskilling and what's needed.
Yeah. So, first of all, hello, everyone. Excited to be here. Thank you, Cliff, for inviting me to speak. And yeah, someone who has worked, I'm from Boston originally, but I have worked in countries like Japan, Spain, Mexico, and Canada. And so, very different work cultures in each of those places. And I have definitely seen the difference in terms of onboarding, in terms of company culture, in terms of how people interact with each other in the workplace, right? In these different countries. So it's been really fascinating to see, for me, the cultural differences in all of these different places. So for me, I've kind of brought all of like a piece from every single place that I've worked at into my current coaching and consulting practice, into US companies that I've worked at as well.
So, just very quickly before we jump into the questions, out of the 4 countries that you've been in,
Yeah.
has any one of them stood out in terms of how they handle upskilling for their employees?
Yeah, I would say definitely. So out of those 4 countries, the one that did the best job in terms of equipping employees with resources and people who could support you was definitely Japan.
Mm.
They are extremely efficient, very forward thinking, and they are extremely organized when it comes to upskilling their workforce and really being at the top of technology stacks too. Like they're very
Yeah.
advanced when it comes to what processes they're using, what systems are in place, and so just a very efficient country altogether. Probably even the train system is the most efficient I've ever seen, right? And so the same thing is in their culture as well.
Great. Excellent. Well, we have a bunch of questions to go over and have a conversation about today regarding upskilling. Before I jump into them, I just want to share with the audience that if you have any specific questions you want to ask us, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll cover them either during the conversation or at the end. Hold on to them, but let us know that you want to ask. So don't hesitate to do that. And the first question really has to do with setting the stage of, what's the difference between reskilling? What's the difference between that and upskilling? We have a significant demand for skilled workers today. We see it increasing significantly. We see layoffs, and we also have, with the very, very low unemployment we have a great need for specific skills in certain segments. So to create a framework and background for this conversation, I think it's important to know what's the difference between reskilling, upskilling. So share with us how you have been using it and defining it.
Yes, great question. So they sound very similar, right? Like upskilling, reskilling, like what are all these skilling things? So let's first start with upskilling. So every single one of you in this space, in this room, myself included, Cliff included, we all have a set of skills that we utilize on a daily basis in our roles. Now, upskilling is learning skills that will advance those skills. So whether that's maybe you work in cloud technology as a product manager, and upskilling would be learning the newest cloud technology that has come
Mhm.
out in the workforce. So that's upskilling. Essentially, it's advancing your current skill sets, right? To be as relevant, up to date as possible. Whereas reskilling, which is something that's being introduced, especially prevalent now because of all the layoffs and people having to learn different functions within an organization, reskilling is learning skills that are maybe outside of your normal day to day role, existing skills, and learning new skills to really advance your career, maybe take on new opportunities. Essentially, that it's adjacent to your current function, but not necessarily the role that you've been doing. I hope that
Got it.
that explained it pretty clearly.
It is, and I think there are, you know, different ways that people look at, let's just put it into the big bucket of career development. So
Hmm.
I work at an organization. I could be on a line, making a production line, producing pieces of equipment, or I
Hmm.
could be an architect in an architecture firm, or
Hmm.
I could be in a service industry. And that is the job that I have. And if I choose to enhance that job or advance, I'm essentially upskilling, or I am maybe reskilling in the specific area that I want to advance to. So I think the whole point here is uh, that one of the reasons I chose to put this topic on in the conversation is that immediately individuals think, oh, I'm not so happy here and I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
Maybe they've invested enough time in the organization and know how to do their job well, and they have to take it upon themselves to either upskill or reskill. And therefore, before you make the choice to say, I'm going to go, I don't really like it here, because they're not giving me any career development opportunity, maybe I need to take a leadership role and say, this is what I need to do to make my job better and bring it to the organization. If they don't have the ability to do it, I'm going to do it for them.
Yeah.
So I think there is an importance to me, just in terms of this conversation, why I asked you to join, because you have the skill set on helping people to do that. I see that as something to help those individuals who are working today struggling because the organization is not giving them the kinds of career development opportunities that they want.
Hmm.
And what can they do about it? And upskilling and reskilling is something that they can do.
Yeah.
So let's move on to why upskilling is essential for employers at this time. What's happening in the marketplace today, which changes so dramatically? Look at where we were last year with really, really low unemployment. And now we're suddenly halfway into the year seeing layoffs. What's happening?
Yeah, less than halfway into the year, and with the amount of layoffs, it's really disheartening. It's pretty scary out there right now. So, what's funny? I gave a talk the other day specifically around this topic, and back in 2020, 2021, we were talking about the Great Resignation. Does everyone
Mhm.
remember that? Where everybody was like,
Yep.
"Doing this anymore? You're not giving me any flexibility. Like, I'm out." And now it's called the Great Retention. In 2023, they're calling it the Great Retention. I don't know if you've heard of that, because companies are now, it's really challenging for them to keep their top talent.
Sure.
And that's happening because of this issue of people feeling like they're not developing new skills, people feeling like they're stagnant. Like, okay, there's no room for growth here. Succession planning is not clear for me. I don't see a future for me at this organization. And top talent, I mean, they're called top talent for a reason, right? They
Mhm.
are go getters. They are people who want to learn and constantly be challenged. They are people who want to grow in their careers, and if they're not seeing those opportunities at their organization, they are going to leave, and they are going to find places that do encourage upskilling, that do provide professional development workshops, that do provide training and learning and development opportunities. And so, the reason that upskilling is so important, especially now, especially for employers who are looking to retain and keep their top talent, is they're going to need to prioritize upskilling. Like people want this. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to grow their skill sets, especially now more than ever because of this economy, because of this unstable workforce that we're in right now. People are looking out for themselves. People are like, okay, this company at any point could just let me go, lay me off, and I want to make sure I have all the skills I need and that I can learn so that I could pivot if I have to. If I have to go to a new job, I'll have the skill set that's most relevant in the marketplace, right? And so upskilling right now should be of top priority to any organization that is looking to retain their talent.
And a follow-up conversation, a follow-up question I have about that is when you were working at Google,
Yeah.
did you happen to experience a time where there was a layoff, meaning in your department or people you knew in other departments that had, it didn't have to be a huge layoff, but
Mhm.
had, maybe 10, 20 people got laid off. Did you experience that at all when you were at Google?
So during my time at Google, my last day was last year in July. So it was actually before all of these massive layoffs. So I didn't experience, this mega layoff kind of what's been going on since December of 2022. It's really when they got hit very, very hard, and then definitely in
Sure.
January. So I didn't really experience layoffs per se, but I did see within the organization that they did offer opportunities for upskilling within the organization. They had a program, trying to remember. I think it was called Slingshot or something like that. It had an internal name. It was like Google
Mhm.
Slingshot, or I don't remember the exact name. But essentially, what they offered was if you were, let's say, you were in the marketing department and you wanted to learn more about the sales department, maybe you wanted to go into sales, you could actually swap roles with someone on the sales team and vice
Mm.
versa and try out that different role for, I think it was like 3 to 6 month period of time. You would have to apply for this and you'd have to be approved and all the things. But that was a pretty cool upskilling, reskilling.
Mhm.
I guess that was more reskilling opportunity that they provided. But in terms of layoffs, I'm not really sure how they handled that because I wasn't there at that time.
And then what about when you came on board?
Yeah. So when I onboarded, I actually started with Google in 2021. So it's very much still in the midst of the pandemic, meaning that there was no on site onboarding at all. They were not allowing employees on site at that time. It was still very much everybody's home.
Mhm.
This pandemic's happening. And so for me, as a brand new recruiter, I came in as a recruiter for the Google Cloud. It was very challenging because I had never been a recruiter before. And as you can imagine, an organization of that size and caliber just has so many processes and so many systems and so many, procedures that they use that you just have to learn. And so for me, it was a challenging process because the onboarding was all virtual.
Right.
So it was all videos that you watched and like surveys you had to take. And for me, I'm an experiential learner. I learn by doing. I learn by seeing how other people do things. I learn through osmosis, right? Like I'm an
Sure.
audio visual learner. So that was very challenging for me because watching a video is not really going to engage me and it's not going to get me to feel comfortable with the material. I actually have to be doing it.
Mhm.
um, and the other piece that I wish that there had been more of was a live training session. So actually having someone there who's more experienced that I could learn
Mhm.
from to ask questions to
And
reassure.
live, you mean virtually live
Well,
because it was
even live
recorded.
virtually, right? But just someone that I could say, "Hey, I don't understand this part. Can you explain
Sure.
it to me?" Or, "Hey, is this the right way of doing this? Can you check for me?" Right? So I think that's really important as well as to have a dedicated person or have dedicated people in the organization whose role it is to support new people, especially.
Sure. Yeah, no, I definitely hear you loud and clear. I can imagine all organizations were struggling with that in
Yeah.
the pandemic, trying to bring people on and skill them sufficiently just for the
Yeah.
organization to just get started and get
Yeah.
going.
Exactly.
So yeah, that definitely would be challenging. I can
Mhm.
understand that. So if you're an individual and you're working at an organization and You're not slated for a layoff, which is good. But I think what's important is that people out there are probably asking, okay, so yeah, I'm going to try and upskill. I'm not going to leave. What are some effective strategies that they could consider to upskill,
Yeah.
to stay relevant in the marketplace today? The marketplace jobs themselves are changing. So how do you figure all of that out? What are some strategies people should consider?
Yeah, so that's the scary part, right? Is a lot of people, especially with the introduction of AI and automation and chat GPT, just, a lot of jobs, especially anything that was automated, especially even content related roles,
Hmm.
are going to be in danger, right? And I don't know when exactly, but it's something that is going to be on the horizon. And so a lot of my clients, so on top of consulting on the HR side, I also work with job seekers. So I'm a career coach. I've worked with hundreds of job seekers at this point. And a lot of them have the same questions, right? How do I grow my skill set? How do I make sure that I'm relevant?
Hmm.
And so the first thing I recommend for people is first understanding, really understanding clearly what skills do you already have,
Hmm.
right? And so I always start with a self assessment because everything starts with self and self awareness. So, first, I recommend for everyone in the room, especially those who are like worried about their roles or maybe worried about are these skills still relevant? Take a moment, maybe write down on an Excel spreadsheet all the skills that you already have. And I'm talking about skills like even non tangible skills, like we were talking about, Cliff, like even skills like being able to negotiate, right?
Right, right,
Mediation, leadership, um, Microsoft Word, right? Google Workspace, right? Whatever the tech stacks you know how to utilize, Salesforce, maybe you know how to use a CRM, maybe you know how to use QuickBooks, right? Whatever it is, really write down all the skill sets that you have and then take a look at yourself and think about in the future for yourself, what kind of roles do you see yourself doing in the future? What kind of work would you want to do in the future? And start looking up those roles and seeing what skills are required to do those roles,
hmm
right? And let's say you have no idea what you want to do in the future, because a lot of people are in that space too. That's where you can start doing some market research and seeing, okay, if I know I kind of want to stay in the marketing space, or if I know I really want to maybe stay around product, start doing some research and seeing what are the growing areas in product, what are the growing areas in marketing, what is the, let's just say use marketing for this example, what is the tech stack that most marketers are using right now. You could even go as far as if there's someone in your organization or someone that you just know of that you really admire their career and what it is that they're doing in their work, you could even reach out and have a conversation with that person. Like, hey, could I have a
Right.
20-minute phone call with you to learn about what skills you're using? And do you have any suggestions for me as someone who wants to grow in this space? Um, Mentorship, right? Like maybe there's
Right.
someone within your organization that you really admire or you look up to or you feel you can learn from. Setting up and being proactive. I would say that's the biggest piece is being proactive because I hate to
Getting
say this,
started.
it sounds really mean, but like no one's coming to save you and no one's coming to advocate for you. You have to advocate for yourself and be proactive in your careers. It's not like the industrial era where you would stay at a job for 20 years and have that stability and be fine doing the same thing every day in and day out. We're not in the industrial revolution anymore. We are way past that to the sense that technology is actually taking a lot of those types of roles completely out of the job market. And so now you have to start thinking about, okay, well, how can I continue creating and designing a career that's going to be relevant, that's going to need a human behind it, right? And two skills that I just want to mention to everyone in this room that AI can never take away from you is number one, your creativity.
Yep.
Creativity and innovation will always be skill sets that AI cannot replicate. Okay. And then the second piece would be the human connection, right? The relationship building piece. That is a skill that AI will never be able to replace. So just thinking about those things for yourself, doing the research, finding mentors, speaking to people who are maybe industry leaders, and learning from them, that will be really helpful for you on your upskilling journey, or hiring a coach. Shameless
So,
plug.
so absolutely. I'm going to get to the hiring a coach in a minute,
Yeah.
but the people who are sitting here hearing you list off very carefully what you need to do might feel extremely overwhelmed
Hmm.
just to get started, even before I even entertain the idea of hiring a coach. And you mentioned earlier trying to figure out what are your skills. So, are there any tools or things that are out there that people can just read about to say, okay, well, these are all the skills that a job would have, and I fit 50% of them. I need the other 50 now,
Hmm.
just to get a sense, just to help them get started for the people who sometimes say, okay, this sounds so overwhelming. I'm not doing anything.
Mm. So you're saying more in the sense of like what tools exist out there.
Exactly. What, if somebody, you mentioned, okay, look at your skill set and figure out what skills you have to do your job. And
Mhm.
you mentioned things like, well, word and negotiation and those kinds of things. If somebody has no idea where to start,
Yeah.
where would you recommend they go?
Yeah, great question. So, for example, one tool that I love to use with clients, but it's also available to the public if you want to use it, is called the UMAP. And UMAP is essentially the aggregation of DISC assessment, and Gallup Strength Finder, and the Myers Briggs all in
Mhm.
one. So
Okay.
all of these types of assessments in one. And what it does is after you take the assessment, it takes like 45 minutes, you receive a 10-page profile that clearly states your skills, your
Mm.
interests, your strengths. It even actually goes as far as saying, what are your weaknesses? What are you not good at?
Mhm.
What are the skills, the skills, sorry, your roles that you shouldn't have?
Ah,
Because a lot of times so many people, we've kind of just been herded into this direction because I don't know, we studied marketing in undergrad. So we felt like we had to just, yeah, same thing, right? We felt like we just had to stay in marketing because that's what I studied. And I guess that's what I
yep.
have to do, without really taking that time to assess yourself and be like, okay, what is it that I'm actually really good at? What is
Mhm.
it that I actually enjoy doing? What skills and interests do I have? And how can I align my career and the job with those skills and interests and strengths? Right? Because I will tell you right now, I took this UMAP assessment a couple of years ago. It was so accurate. It scared me. And I was like, I wish I had taken this as a 21-year-old in college when I
Sure.
didn't know what the hell I was going to do with my life,
Exactly.
because I think it would have given me so much more clarity as to the kinds of roles that make sense for me. Because once you understand those things about yourself, now you can look at roles and say, okay, is this role utilizing my strengths and my interests and my skills? And if it's not at all, then it's probably not going to be a good role for you. Probably not going to be a good fit. And you probably won't enjoy it.
Exactly.
Um, and you won't want to grow in that, right? And so I would say UMAP is great. Obviously, DISC assessment is also helpful to just understand more about your personality set. Um,
And then
Gallup,
there's strengths finder. Yep,
I
that's
would say Gallup Strength Finder
strengths
is
finder.
great. You can
Very
do it
good.
online. I think it's $20. Um,
All
there's a
those are
hmm
very valuable. And so you also mentioned something that would be an effective strategy would be to network and find people to talk to and help you understand about you and what skills you have and how they fit in the working world. So somebody who is not a good networker today,
mm,
not everybody is, and it
yeah,
is a
skill.
skill. That's something you have to learn.
Yeah.
You always hear about networking, and you hear about it in the sales field and people who are good at that, and business development. So somebody who thinks that that's just too scary,
Mm,
uh, what would you suggest one or two things that they do first that's really, really easy?
yeah. It's a great point. So I think I'm a networker. I'm
Okay.
very extroverted. I love networking, but I've met so many people who are not extroverted, right? They're very
Mhm.
introverted. Maybe they feel self conscious at events or conferences or whatever. And I actually say that right now, because of the hybrid work life, space that we're in, this is actually the perfect time for introverts to be networking,
Hmm.
because you don't have to go to huge crowds and crowded places and feel awkward. You can actually go on LinkedIn and maybe join a community group and reach out to one person, right? Maybe it's one person that you've been following for a while and you love what the work that they're doing and you're really interested in learning more about their background or how they got there, or what advice they have for someone who's interested in doing that type of work. And so I say, this is actually a great time to be building those one-on-one
Hmm.
relationships. And yes, you do have to put yourself out there. Yes, you might have to be uncomfortable, especially if you're an introvert, and reaching out to people. But I also say this: nothing grows in comfort, right? And so
Exactly.
sometimes you have to do things that make you uncomfortable in order to grow. And even if that means growing your opportunities. And honestly, that's how I look at networking, is really thinking about it as relationship building
Yeah.
rather than transactional, because no
And
one likes
you're
to
not
feel.
selling anything.
Exactly. And no one likes to feel like that anyway. I know everyone in here, you included, Cliff, you've probably gotten those messages on LinkedIn of like, check out my product, or like, come buy this or whatever. And like,
Right, right.
what do? You delete them. You're like, oh, yuck. Right. But if somebody were to reach out to you, Cliff, and say, hey, Cliff, like, really, really impressed by your background in HR consulting. And I see that you've made a huge impact in a lot of workplaces, and that's really inspiring to me. Do you have 20 minutes in the next couple of weeks to just tell me a little bit more about your journey?
Or I want to learn because
Or
I'm
I would love
interested
to
in
learn.
too.
Yeah. And do you see the difference in that message, right? It's not
Mhm.
transactional, it's actually genuine, it's authentic. You're showing someone, you're giving someone something of value. And actually, it's funny. I just had a conversation with a client about this, because they want to reach out to a CEO of a company, and they're like, well, I'm not a CEO, so why would they want to speak with me? I don't have anything of
Exactly.
value. And I had
Exactly.
to tell them, like, listen, value is not just monetary. Value could be that they posted something and you reshare it and you repost it. Value could be that you introduce them to someone. Value could be that even you just reaching out and saying, hey, I admire the work that you're doing at X, Y, and Z. And I just
Yes.
want to let you know I'm watching and I'm a huge fan. That's valuable, right?
Mhm.
Because somebody was going to feel really good about that and they received that message, and that's value. So really
Exactly.
just reassessing that, being clear with your ask, and being genuine with your outreach.
And I think it's also true if you've never networked, if you're truly an introvert and you do your work and you have your family and your friends and that's you just stay in that lane. And now Christina's saying, okay, well we gotta get a little bit out of that lane. And before you even get out of that lane, sometimes it's helpful to turn to people that are in your network already.
Mhm. Oh yeah, definitely.
And so you could say to somebody who you know well or a good family member and say, "Hey, look, I need to go ask somebody to have a conversation with me. What do you suggest? Or
Yeah,
can I practice on you?" I think that would be helpful too, so
yeah.
that people don't have to feel that they have to step out of their lane without any practice.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that, because that's actually, I'm going to share a career coaching gem here. That's actually one of the first things I do with any clients who are looking to transition careers, pivot, job search. I always say, send a message first to maybe 10 to 20 people in your personal network who know you well, who
Mm,
you have a positive relationship with, whether that's family, family friends, colleagues, maybe you're in a sorority or a fraternity, right? Whoever those people are, and let them know, hey, these are the kinds of opportunities I'm looking for, or hey, this is what's happening right now, in my career, and I'm looking to learn how to whatever, and be very clear, and let all those people know. It could be one mass email that you send, just to let your network know what it is you are looking for support in, and you'll be surprised the type of support that you can receive. Not
mm,
saying every single person will reply, but at
mhm.
least one to two people may connect you with someone, or may say,
Sure.
"Oh, I know someone hiring for that type of role. Let me put you in touch with them." Or you should probably speak to so and so because they're doing that, right? Like, that's kind of the whole reason we have a community, right? And it's to lean
Mhm.
on them when we need support, and vice versa. When they need support, hopefully they can lean on you.
You're going to reciprocate. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Hmm.
So when organizations are looking at upskilling, and they're saying, okay, we now need to start paying attention because Christina said we do. And a lot of people are saying, even their employees are saying it. Um, why is upskilling so important for talent and for the employees? From the employer's perspective, for
Yeah.
those who aren't really paying attention, why is it so important for them?
Yeah. For the employee, right?
For the employer to pay attention.
For the employer to pay attention. Okay. So on the employer side, as I mentioned, it's the great retention right now. So on the employer side, they're trying to figure out, how do we keep our top talent happy? How do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them here so that they don't take all of this IP, right? All of this intelligence that they've learned throughout their years or time at the organization somewhere else, right? And so for employers, it's extremely important to be prioritizing learning and development opportunities, upskilling your employees, training employees so that they're learning new things so that they don't search for that somewhere else, right? Like you mentioned, like a lot of people, if they don't feel like they're growing in their role, they'll just go, well, I'm going to go somewhere else. Well, we
Right.
don't want to give them that opportunity to even think that. We want them to think, you know what? I know my company would meet me halfway. I know that they could somehow provide me resources so that I stay here because they value me, because they respect me, because they see my worth, right? And that's how most people want, that's how everyone wants to feel
Mhm.
at their organization. So on the employer side, it's very crucial to be thinking about succession planning for your employees. And it should be also very clear, especially to your top talent, but to all employees, what opportunities, growth opportunities exist for them.
To
Because
stay.
just in general, because I will tell you right now, as someone who coaches many job seekers, the number one reason people leave their roles is because of toxic management. That's number one. Number two, toxic work culture. So feeling psychologically unsafe is what I've been seeing. And then number three is lack of career progression
Mhm.
or growth, right? Where people are like, I don't see any room here for growth. My manager is a jerk and the culture is not good. I'm out, right?
Exactly.
And so if they even had maybe one of those things done well, they would probably stay, right? But it's a lot of companies failing to do those three things because even managers need training. And we've talked a lot about that, Cliff. That's a whole other
That's true.
discussion. But managers also need a ton of upskilling.
Now, I think the other obvious question that comes to mind is if I'm an employer and I'm not paying attention to upskilling, there's a cost to losing people.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yes, there's a
People
huge
don't
cost.
realize it's like the biggest cost. The biggest cost is losing your talent.
And so let's walk through some of what those costs are so people can wrap their head around.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to speak to it again as a recruiter. I was a recruiter, so I trust me, I understood the cost. So, first and foremost, your employees, no matter what company or industry you're in, your employees, your talent are your number one asset. That is your number one asset at any organization. Now, the ones that treat them accordingly, that treat their employees like their number one asset, are going to do really well right now. The companies that do not are going to suffer because people are going to leave. Turnover is going to be high. And
Mhm.
so, what I've noticed throughout my career, not just in recruitment, but working at many different corporate and tech companies, is that the companies that really do value their employees, not just development, but even work life balance,
Yep.
culture, benefits, those are the companies that retain the talent and are doing extremely well still to this day. Right. And so, back to your question, the cost of losing talent, first and foremost, the cost of productivity. It takes an average of 6 months to replace an employee,
Mm. Yep.
right? And then throw on top of that, so 6 months of unproductivity, right? 6 months of someone not doing this role, which now probably has to be done by other people,
Somebody else, exactly.
somebody else, in a way that's probably not as effective and productive. So you're losing productivity. And then on top of that, you have to onboard this new person. And that takes about 90 days on average to onboard someone. So you're really losing almost 9 months of productivity. And God knows how much money
Sure,
that's also
absolutely.
requiring. And then on top of it, you're also spending a ton of money, resources, and time to recruit,
Recruit the people.
interview, and rehire people, right? And so it's just, it really is a huge loss to an organization when a top talent leaves.
And a statistic we've used in HR, I don't know how credible it is just to help people put a number on what that cost is. We've always used the number of 125% of people's salary is what it costs to replace them. So if somebody's making $100,000, you're going to spend 125 on that new person to bring them in,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
So people can understand the impact of the cost when you put the numbers on it.
definitely.
So I think as we look at the time and start to think about uh, finishing up, I think people are going to want to know what recommendations you might have for people out there who are looking to upskill themselves. We've talked a little bit about some of them,
Hmm.
but I think now would be a good time to just tap into what more of them are, like hiring a coach. Let's talk about that, and what does that look like, and how do people do it, and how does the employer handle it if the employer doesn't want to pay for any of that? What do people do?
Yeah. So there are a lot of options out there for people nowadays. That's one of, I think that's been one of the positives that has come out of COVID, if I could say that, that's kind of a positive, is that there's a lot more resources online now that are affordable, that are available to workers out there who are looking to upskill. So the first thing I would say, as I mentioned before, self-assessment first. Realize what skills it is that you want to learn more, right? So starting there. Because if not, you're going to be like a chicken with your head cut off, right? You're going to go to Coursera or going to go to Google certifications, and you're going to do, okay, I can do all of them. And it's like, no, 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 let's be focused, right? Let's focus. So first, understanding what skill sets you want to upskill when you want to learn. And then if you work at an organization, if you are working somewhere, they may provide professional development stipends or
Mhm.
some type of I don't even know what do you call them, like
A
a
certification?
certification, or they may provide a budget for professional development.
Oh,
So
yes,
I
yes.
would say reach out to your HR team and ask them, hey, like, are there any professional development stipends available if I want to get this certification, or if I want to take this course at Cornell, or if I want to, do it, go to a conference to
Hmm.
upskill, whatever skill you want to learn, right? So first, I would say within your organization, see what you can get, right? See what they can sponsor, what they can fund. But you also have to remember that it has to be relevant to your role. So to be able to really, justify it, right? So that'd be the first thing. If for some reason they don't offer any money or they don't offer any support, um, that might be a sign that maybe that's not the best place for you. But the second thing I would say is also looking at, there's a ton of online resources now. Like, for example, Coursera, right? Like, that is a great place to get access to so many different types of courses that exist out there. I know Google has a digital certification program. They offer a lot of digital certifications online now, and I think they're free. I think some of them are free. So there's a ton.
Hmm.
LinkedIn Learning has a ton of classes and courses and certifications you can take on LinkedIn Learning. I'm trying to think other ones. Masterclass, uh,
Hmm.
Udemy, General Assembly. I mean, there are tons of resources out there online. So just search whatever skill that you want, search it, and I guarantee there's a course for it online. So that is another thing. Another option, hire a coach, right? If you really feel stuck, if you really feel like, hey, I don't really know where to go here. I'm feeling lost. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I could use a thought partner, a strategic thinker. A
Mhm.
coach could be a great option for you as well. I mean, the role of a coach, I'm a career coach, right? And my role is to help you navigate your career. So, really being that support partner, that thoughtful, strategic thinker with you, right? Because a lot of times we're in our head and we get very overwhelmed and we don't know where to start. And it's really helpful to have an objective third party, like someone who's just looking at your skill sets and looking
Mhm.
at your goals and being like, hey, what steps do we really need to take to get you there? Right. So a coach could be helpful. You could also join an online community. There's so many communities online, like industry specific or
Resource
goal
groups,
specific
exactly.
resource groups, mentors, right? You could get a mentor and have a conversation with them. But all of this to say is you don't have to do it alone,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And I want people to remember that. Like, I know we were never really taught in college or in school that we can ask for help, right? And I'm here to say you definitely can ask for help. And someone said community colleges have great, yeah, community colleges have great certification programs.
Exactly.
Try to see like what resources are most available and affordable for you. But first start with the company, right? See what they can do for you first. And then if they can't do anything, then go to the next resource.
And I am going to say, though, that even if, in defense of a company,
Yeah.
if they can't pay for training or development, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is an issue with the organization. Um, there could be other things that are going on in the organization that you just may not know and they just
Yeah.
can't say.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, I think that's the second side of the reason why we're having this program is that it's up to you. You're in charge of your career, and you need to do what you need to be for you to be successful and for you to be happy and for you to be fulfilled. You need to do it yourself. And so, yeah, great. If my employer can pay for some of it, excellent.
Hmm.
If they can't, they can't, and it's up to me to upskill and
Yeah.
take
And
advantage.
can I just say one more thing? Like,
Yeah,
everyone in the space, especially maybe who's never had a coach or really gone above and beyond to learn skills, you really have to think about it as an investment, right? It's an investment into yourself,
sure.
because your biggest, most important investment in this life is going to be in you, right? So whatever skills you learn, no one can take those away from you. So even if you leave the
Sure.
job, even if they fire you, even if you get laid off, whatever, like those skills are going to stay with you. So
Exactly.
really looking at it as this is an investment into my development, into my skill set.
Right. And then, there's also a different way to navigate with the employer specifically. If they say, well, no, there isn't anything here, there is nothing wrong with you saying, hey, look, this is what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
And, I'll be honest with you, I love it here. I need this for me professionally. And if we're not able to work on something, I might have to look for something else. There
Mhm.
is nothing wrong with you being transparent with the employer because don't forget the employer might be completely distracted with running the business
Yeah.
and just getting the work done, producing whatever they're producing, selling whatever they're selling. And now they've got this employee coming along saying, hey, just watch out for me. I need to grow a little. And the
Mhm.
employer could be completely distracted, which is okay. And you're bringing it to their attention, and they might say, oh, yeah, I really think I should do something about it,
Yeah.
even though their immediate reaction might have been, no, we just don't have the money.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I think there is a value in doing that. So as we're getting towards the end, I thought I would just ask you, the expert, as the career coach out there and the upskiller out there, um, how does someone determine what skills they need to improve upon? And so this is a little bit more than going beyond. I've identified what my skills are, and I've said, okay, these are what I'm good at, and these is what I'm not good at. How do they determine what they should focus on to improve?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question because it's going to be unique for every single person, right? And so,
So is that something maybe you cover in the coaching?
yeah, oh, definitely. So, in the coaching, especially when you're working one on one with someone, you can really go deep, right? You can really try to understand what do they, what is that next step they want to take? What do they see for themselves as a long term goal, maybe a short term goal? So, being very clear on your goals. Let's say, for example, that you work in data analytics, right? Like, let's say you have a job in data analytics and your future goal is to become a data analytics manager. Maybe you want to be a
Mhm.
team manager. And so, thinking about, okay, well, what is a data analytics manager? What skill sets do they need? Right. And so, I recommend first looking at job descriptions that maybe you want to have in the future. Because let me tell you, as someone who worked in recruiting, people do not spend enough time examining the job description because so much of what's in the job description is what you should be putting on your resume, is the skills that you should be highlighting on your LinkedIn page, is what you should be speaking about when you're networking, right? Like, it's all in the job description. So taking a look maybe at job descriptions that you're interested in and really seeing and analyzing what skill sets, what qualifications are they looking for.
Mhm.
So that could be one great way to understand what skills you may need. The second, again, was market research.
Mhm.
Going on websites like Glassdoor or salary.com. And, if finances, so for some people, finances is number one, right? Salary
Mhm.
is your number one priority. So understanding, okay, at this organization or in this industry, these are the top paying roles.
Sure.
Cool. Okay, what skills do I need to be in that role? Right? And so that's another thing that goes with market research is just seeing what's out there and what's in the future going to be very prevalent, right? So that's another thing. Um, as I mentioned before, also having a sponsor or a mentor that you can
Yes.
speak with, right? So someone that can give you their advice, their expertise is like, hey, and they may even say, hey, these are skills that are going to be needed in the future that I'm already seeing in this role.
Right.
That might not even
You
exist.
can't see them. Yes.
Exactly. It might not even be on the job description because most jobs that are going to come up in the future don't exist right now.
Mhm.
So, how do you get ahead of the curve? You learn from people who are doing that work already and asking them, hey, what skills do you think I'll need in 5 years from
Mhm.
now? Where do you see this role or industry? What direction do you see it moving towards? And what advice do you have for me if I want to move in that direction? So again, it's talking to people, it's putting yourself out there too. So that also in the future, let's say you have this mentor and you build a good relationship and then a role opens up, then you're the
Mhm.
first person they think of, right? They're like, oh,
Exactly.
so and so has been working on their certifications for this. Let me share this opportunity with them.
That's definitely the beauty of networking is that
Yeah.
people are looking out for stuff for you and you're not even paying
Exactly. And you want to
attention.
be top of mind, right? And so that's why you really have to think of it as relationship building. It's not
Mhm.
this transactional one time a year you send a
Kind of thing.
Merry Christmas card, right? It's
Right. Right.
actually how are we adding value to each other? How am I supporting you? How are you supporting me? How are we being continuous with this?
Mhm.
Um, so that it doesn't feel because it feels icky when it's that transactional thing, right? It feels
Exactly.
like ooh, I feel like used.
Mhm.
It's just like, hey, she only reaches out to me when she wants a job at Google, right?
Exactly.
It just doesn't
But
feel.
like you said earlier, when people feel that you're asking for help,
Yeah.
or you're trusting their advice, or you're
Mhm.
asking them for their advice, that feels completely different, and
Yeah,
that's important,
completely.
very important. So I think we've covered a lot. You summarized a lot of the things that people need to take away from here today with respect to strategies so that they can be successful in upskilling. I'm going to just put it out there to the audience if there's any last questions or questions
Yeah.
that we want to ask that people want to ask. We can be available for a minute or two to answer those. If not, then there's no time like forever. We're available to answer those questions, so you can send them along to Circle Strategies, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Christina, thank you so much for participating today and sharing all of your expertise on upskilling and your experience. It's so valuable and powerful. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you all for participating and listening in to us. And we wish you all a great rest of the day.
Yeah, and good luck with your upskilling and continue it. And I would say my last piece of advice is be proactive in your career. Don't just sit back and expect someone to give you opportunities and provide you training. Like you have to be proactive to design the career that you want for yourself.
Very, very good advice. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
All right, take care.